on this planet, there is enough resources for every man, woman, and child to have food every day, to have water every day, to have knowledge every day, to live as productive people who nurture the planet instead of killing it. All of those things are coming now out, that if we stopped the world today and everybody moved into their own self-care and self-responsibility in a way, in 24 hours, everyone would have everything they need. We have that much resource on our planet, and we already have it here. We've set up a third dimension hierarchy that does not share that. And so now we're coming into this new age of Aquarius, and the golden age, where we are going to be sharing this now. We've got enough people that say, I've got to go out in the world and I've got to leave an energy of working together. Nobody has to lose. When we do that, when we get that realization, and it's already here. I mean, oh my gosh, I talk to people all over the world now, and the things that people are doing are incredible.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Hey, welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite, my friend. I'm excited to share with you a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Marilyn DuMont. Marilyn is an astrologer, and she has quite an extensive history. Experience. She's now all over the world, but I had the opportunity to come in contact with her, about 15 years ago, and she did some personal readings with me, and let me tell you something, right on the money, baby. Amazing. So Marilyn is going to share with us her expertise, her passion, her extensive knowledge of the field of astrology in this episode. We're going to talk about what is astrology, so we make sure we've got a good working understanding of what the heck we're talking about, and more importantly, how it can help us in our everyday lives, how we can connect to cycles in our lives and things that are happening in events to help us understand not only ourselves better and our soul path, but also to have more knowledge and wisdom, and like I said, ultimately understand this life experience better, because as you probably will recall, that is the big mission of my show. That is why Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier exists, because I want to help us all understand ourselves better, understand how we can create more freedom and love and joy in our lives. That is why we are here. So Marilyn DuMont shares with us where free will comes into an astrological chart. And we talk about discernment with some tips on that, and the holistic nature of astrology and the history of astrology, how astrology even came about, which was like 6,000 years ago, and how no, it is not a cult, but it is actually based in science and mathematical equations of planetary shifts and the way things line up. There's a lot of physics in it, but don't worry, we don't get too deep on that. We try to keep it really practical and everyday, but still giving you the foundation to understand just the real meat of the science. And we also talk about how astrology relates to Christianity, and how a lot of the foundations in astrology are from the Christian religion. And we talk about, so fascinating, how some major events in the world were correlated with astrological dates. For example, the birth of Christ and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Did you know those were actually in the astrological charts? It's just fascinating. Not to mention major life events in the world like tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanoes exploding. All these things were correlated with astrological charts. And Marilyn shares with us her view on when the COVID-19 crisis should be expected to finally come to an end. All the crazy. You want to tap in for that one, I'm sure. And she shares with us her take on the Age of Aquarius, which is what we are in now. And the dangers of not taking action on things that are important to you. So the next time you feel small and insignificant and you're only one person, well, you know what? She gives us a quick smack in the pants and wakes us up to the power of an individual and how you, my friend, your life and what you do or don't do matters. I love talking about that kind of stuff. Very empowering. And Marilyn shares with us the top 3 things to address in looking at your own personal chart of your astrology and how the cycles of your life and the seasons of your life correlate with your chart and where your sign, you know, like are you Aquarius, are you Capricorn, are you a Leo, how that fits into your chart and the correlations. And we talk about basically just how the bigger picture of our world, you know, the galaxies, the stars, the planets, nature, us as individuals, the holistic nature of this life experience we're having. Love that discussion. So, are you ready to put on your Wonder Woman suit? Because we're going up, baby. We're flying up into the atmosphere and we're getting into astrology with the one, the only Marilyn DuMont. Marilyn, welcome to the show.
It's so good to see you.
It is wonderful to reconnect with you after all this time. Everyone, Marilyn and I go way back. Marilyn, when did we first connect? It has to be decades.
I thought of that the other day. I thought, how long has it been? It's got to be probably 15 years.
I think you're right. Everybody, as you know, Marilyn is an astrologer, and wow, a really special one at that. I have worked with her personally, and I'm just so thrilled to reconnect with her now that I have a show and can share her wisdom and knowledge and the gift of astrology to the world. So we're going to get right into it. Can you please tell us just a little bit about your background, what got you into it, and your take on astrology, Marilyn?
Well, yes, I have. It's been an interesting journey. I started astrology, working with astrology. It's 23 years ago now, and I was a forensic accountant prior to that. But I worked also in a metaphysical bookstore in Atlanta, where I was the accountant, the financial officer for the store. So I worked there also. And it was this journey with that group that brought me into the world of astrology, the world of working in the metaphysical world. And it was so different for me. I had never really experienced it until I went to work for this company. And so in that, I had a moment where it was the world changed. And in that, I became an astrologer. So I had that experience of a near-death experience that brought me to this. And in it, when I came back, they, on the other side, had given me the gift of astrology. And I started immediately when I got back doing astrology readings. And here I am, 23 years later, still doing that. And I have met amazing people all over the world, including you, by the way. Oh my gosh. It's just been, excuse me.
Thank you.
It has just been an amazing time where I am in that world of other people's lives. And I had to come to that grip of understanding that it was a whole new world open to me. I was never going to be the same. I got into that realm where I knew that I had an understanding that an instruction manual did come with us. Every one of us has an instruction manual, and it is your astrology chart. It tells us exactly what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, and it talks about your personality, your emotional makeup, your world of all dimensions that you live in. And we live in the third dimension on the planet Earth, but we also move into other dimensions, which then can be interpreted as those dimensions where it's things you don't see, you just know. So as I started working with people over those years, I got the understanding that we can know who we are, and that in the knowledge of who we are, we can become our authentic selves, we can be in our own integrity, and we can be in a place where we are in congruency with that. Because particularly in the Western cultures, we were taught from the Puritan times of the 1700s, we were taught to put ourselves aside and do what the group says do, and deny ourselves. And so as I started working with people, I thought, oh my gosh, this frees us all to become, in the knowledge of their chart, to become absolutely in a place where you are authentically yourself. And in that spot, that place of authenticity, you become that person who is self-knowing, self-understanding, and you can actualize that, and our life becomes so much more fluid while we're living in that stage. So it's such a relief when you find out that you can be who you are. And in that, then you find that place where work becomes not work, but a joy. I always tell the story of Steve Jobs. When he developed Apple, of course, he was a frontiers person. He opened the world to the ability for everybody to be online. But the interesting thing was, one of his journeys was he actually got fired from his own company, had to go start another company, and then find himself again and come home. And then in the latter years of his life, developed pancreatic cancer. Well, when you are doing what your heart tells you, what your chart tells you, nothing is impossible. And that man lived for over 9 years with pancreatic cancer, which is something that normally kills you in 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. But he lived because he was in his passion and in his heart and in his authentic self. And that gave him the grace of being able to stay and finish his work. So that's what a chart does for you. It tells you, it gives you your grace. It gives you your understanding of who you are, and it gives you permission to be that. So, and in our work, as we did our work, how that worked for you. Mm-hmm. That brought you back to where your heart was, and look at where it's taken you now.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything you said is just so powerful and wonderful, and I want to get into the transits and the charts and the planetary influence. But can we back up a moment just for the sake of terminology and definition, and just tell us, Marilyn, for the layperson, what is astrology?
Well, it's an interesting thing that has never found its place because it is math. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, why did a forensic accountant become an astrologer? Well, your astrology chart is actually a chart of physics. It's a mathematical chart. It is not metaphysical. Now, we interpret a metaphysical side of it, but the fact is, it is a, and I will, here is, and I don't want you to bear on that it's today, but this is today's chart. So here is the chart, the circle where all the planets are sitting in that chart for today, which, by the way, is a new moon that's very, very powerful today. But as those planets move in the air on our charts, we follow that movement. And that tells us what an astrology chart is it tells us who we are character-wise, who we are emotionally, and the persona that we put out on the planet. And that, what character are we? And the character is our sign. Everybody walks up to everybody in a party, what's your sign? What are you doing? Mm-hmm. And so, who are you? And in astrology, the sign is our character. So everybody that's a Leo has Leo characteristics. Everybody that's a Sagittarius has Sagittarius, and so on. So as we learn who we are, who we came to be on the planet, astrology tells us the journey of our soul. Why we're here, because we come to the planet to learn. We come to the planet to grow the knowledge of our soul so that when we go back to the I am, the other side, we're wiser. We have more information to take back there. That's all an astrology chart is it's the journey of our soul on the planet, learning how to become more connected to the I am energy, which we all go back to when we leave the planet. So it's really this important place of on the journey on the planet, which is done in days and weeks and months and years. That journey teaches us, and we're here to learn, and we're here to learn to add more knowledge and wisdom to our soul. And that's all an astrology chart is, but it's mostly physics. But here's the thing, that disallows it from becoming a science, is that in it, one of the things that the universe gave us was the ability to discern things. And in that, we have the free will to live the full strength of our chart in the highest consciousness, or we have the free will to just trash our life if we want to. And so therefore that takes the boat of science away from it. When you have the free will to know what's going on in your chart, but deny it, it takes the science out of it. So it's a science and an art. It's the science of the movement of the planets by mathematical equation, but the art of it is, how are you going to grow your soul? How are you going to live and become more conscious, or choose just to sit on the sofa in your lifetime? So, and the truth of that is that at times the world is such that we go through periods where we just sit down and not necessarily our finest hours. And then we go through where we live incredible things about soaring to your highest gift. That's where miracles happen, and that's where people become heroes, is when they're soaring in that physics. When they're just sitting on the sofa, we kind of give people a hard time about that. So, and in your chart, your astrology chart, is about learning all those lessons along the way. It's not a cult. You know, TV tries to make it, ooh, a cult kind of thing, but it's not. It's the pattern of your life and how you're going to live those cycles in your life. And if you follow that for yourself and learn a little bit about it for yourself, you know where you're going. It gives you a strength of trusting yourself, trusting your own instincts.
Well, I think what's also important is that for people to realize that astrology is over 6,000 years old. I mean, it's for the longest we have records of human tribes together and human beings, because basically it's the observation of the interaction with nature, with the planets. The whole foundation of astrology was from cultures that observed the world around them and start to notice patterns and connections of the stars and their movements, of the sun and the moon and the planetary shifts, of the changes of the seasons, of how the animals responded and the water and things on the planet. That was all the basis for astrology. So all of our humanity is founded in astrology, which can be, again, described as just the observation of the cycles of the bigger world. And I'm so glad you mentioned how, the holistic nature of the bigger picture is really what this is all about, and that we are made of the same stuff as stars. We are star stuff. And so for people to just keep in mind that, no, this isn't a cult, and no, this isn't anything about woo-woo, makeup, mystical stuff. This is actually like it can be reductionism and reduced down to the material of we are the same stuff as stars. So why, and thinking about the holistic nature of everything coming together, how could we not be influenced by where we came from?
Well, and that is the as above, so below and energy. We are everything. And everything is us. And when we come to the earth, we get sent into a third dimension area where there is a positive and a negative, there is a push and a pull, and we have to live in that limited space to learn, because that's how we learn, is by being, pushed against in some way. And so the world is set up for us to follow cycles, because every planet has its own cycle. And then you take it out even further into the galaxy, where we're in the Milky Way galaxy here. And as you were saying, I loved that you brought in that this goes back 6,000 years. Well, it does. And it also goes back to the fact that we've had many groups of people on this planet who we don't even have history about anymore, but we know they were here, and the Mayans and how they looked at the stars. And even in the Bible, I mean, people understand that the wise men that came from India,
there you go,
were astrologers.
Yep, followed a star. Well, the early Christians,
which by the way, which is kind of interesting, that in December of this last year, just several months ago, we had the grand conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which is believed by the mystics of all of this, that when those two planets came together back at the time Christ was born, and 800 years ago from now, when those two planets came together in the sky like they did in the third week of December last year, they came back together. Jupiter and Saturn came together, the two timing planets, and that brought the birth of Christ. And then it also brought the 1200 AD, where the world became stretching out of the dark ages and coming into the ages of the modern age of consciousness. And so we we go through these cycles over thousands and thousands of years on this planet. And as we do that, we learn and we grow. And the Mayan calendar, which ended one of its sections in 2012, moved us into a whole new realm of consciousness on the planet. So many people are seeking themselves now. So many people are coming to astrology to find out who they are. And in this time, we're shifting from third dimension energy, which is very linear, to multi-dimension energy right now, which is the ascension energy. But we're doing it on the planet Earth. We're not having to leave to go do it somewhere. So it's just the most interesting time to be on the planet right now because things are shifting so greatly.
Yes, significantly. And I love that you said that about the birth of Christ. That's just fascinating because even when we go back and we look at some of the big disturbances on the earth, from my understanding, they are often related to the movement of the planet Uranus and like the tsunamis and volcanoes. I mean, if you want science, there's your science. I mean, like these huge planetary shifts, even like meteors and things, are times when the stars are aligned a certain way. I mean, the Egyptians knew it with the pyramids. I mean, the shafts of the pyramids are lined up to certain stars when the constellation lines up a certain way. I mean, to me, you don't get more scientific than that. Like you said, it's a mathematical equation and it's almost predictable. So why would we not want to have a working knowledge in our current, quote unquote, modern, sophisticated society of understanding this so we can harmonize our lives, get in sync with it, and, even to have the heads up for certain things. Like, let me tell you, I want to know if a meteorite's going to strike me. I would like a heads up on that. So, I mean, it's just, it's illogical to me that people would poo-poo something. Unfortunately, it's been given a bad rap, with, the back of the newspaper with the astrology chart and all the, the charlatans. But the fact is, if you really look into the foundation and the research and the where it evolved from, and when you learn really what it does, it makes sense, for all the reasons that we're saying.
It does. And just follow the history of it. I'm kind of a history junkie. I love history. And in astrology, it's so important because we do live in cycles. The planets go around our chart in cycles, and they each have a different time frame of doing that. And they move us in the forward direction. I find that it's very interesting when we had this beautiful conjunction happen in December. And it took about 10 days for it to do it because it was coming in and then it was for 2 or 3 days and then it had to go out. So it took about 10 days for that. And I talked to people about that energy of, oh my goodness, do you understand we are here for this? Everybody that can go out tonight and look at the day that it did happen completely. I said, do you understand you are in a time where the next time you can see this is 800 years from now?
Darn, I wish I knew.
This is never going to come back in our time.
Wow.
And we're also in a time right now in our world that we are changing. When the planet Pluto, which is a transformational master planet, he transforms things. He's death and transformation. When he does that, his cycles, it takes him 250 years to go around a chart. So in those 250 years, he hits each sign of the zodiac an average of about 25 years. That's not always 25 in each sign. When he hits Capricorn, where he sits now, is when we go through the world, restructure the world, and recreate a whole new level of consciousness growing so that we grow our whole essence on the planet Earth into a higher vibration. Well, When was the last time he was there? The last time he was in Capricorn was in the early 70s of 1700. So what was going on in the world in the early 70s, late 60s into early 70s of 1770 through
Wasn't that when the
American Revolution?
I was just going to say the Constitution and all that was then
right. The Declaration of Independence was signed on July in 76. So the war had just started in 76. When they signed that Declaration of Independence, that created the war. And so while they were doing that war, Pluto was transiting through Capricorn, which also then said, we're going to change the whole world. Because if you and I got together and we could time travel back to 1776, okay, right now. And because we hit those same degrees of Pluto, we hit those same degrees of the day the Constitution was signed last year. So what was happening in our world last year? The whole world, you know, it stopped. We had coronavirus. It stopped the world. It's changing the whole world. Politics, culture, science, religion, and technology. They're all changing. So you and I we'll just pretend we're bopping off to Philadelphia right now. We're going to go break in at the signing of the Declaration of the Constitution. So here we are. We're going to walk in and we're going to say, oh, guys, do you know what you're doing today? Do you know how it is literally going to change the world in ways we don't even know? So, you know, I go, oh, gosh, Washington, you're going to start a war in a few months, and you're going to be taking this, and you're going to be bringing this colony to a country that in the future is going to thrive on the planet. And oh, Hamilton over there, do you know you're going to invent money in 1785, 86, and we're going to have paper money that we carry around? Oh, and there's this man over in Germany who's going to patent the steam engine. And we're going to have factories, and we're going to have trains, and we're going to have this steam engine that runs, you know, can heat and run things. And then where are we going to go? Oh, let me see. Oh, Thomas Jefferson. Do you know you're going to become a famous inventor? You're going to invent all kinds of new things, technology. And oh, let me see. Ben Franklin, you're going to fly the kite and find out what electricity means. We can go around that room, and every one of those men had that kind of influence. So then from there, we go, oh my gosh, you know, you're going to start this war. It's going to be the fall of England. And then just a few years ago, there was this little kid born who's called Napoleon. And in the late 80s, he's going to come in and free Europe up from the kingdoms.
Okay, so are you saying this because these things, all these events are predictable by the chart, is what you're getting at? Like, so a chart can predict, but then again, that's where the fate and destiny comes in. So if you're saying, well, this is going to happen, but what about the person's own free will of what if they didn't, you know, don't do it or something, then that obviously wouldn't happen.
Well, there goes the thing. I believe we have generations of people that come in and they're fated to do this. They're fated to do the change.
Okay.
And I think that's where we are now, because in all of those men sitting in that room, people have commented in the last 20 years that if we had to write our Constitution again, there is nobody on the earth that could write it like they did.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yes. So now, but what's happening now, because we're switching the consciousness of the planet now, because Pluto's back here, so he's growing us up again.
Yeah, and we're trashing the Constitution. So much for our First Amendment, Third Amendment, Fifth Amendment.
Oh, but we aren't. What we're doing is, back then they had 350,000 people that were living that had immigrated from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
We have 350 million people now. We don't have to trash our Constitution, but we are, because what we're doing is being stubborn. Those in certain positions are being stubborn about modernizing our Constitution, and instead they're trashing it. But in that realm, the trashing is teaching us to stand up for ourselves. And when I had people in in 2005 to 2015, when is all this chaos going to be over? And I tell people it's going to be 2044 before it is. Oh my God, 2044. I said, yes, because if you look back at our government and at the world in those years of 1776 to 1800, there was chaos everywhere. They created a revolution. So I said, we haven't even started the revolution. We didn't start our revolution until 2015. So in 2015, there was an eclipse that just flipped our planet into a whole nother level of consciousness. Now look what's coming out. If you overlook the media, but you go look at the realms where you can see people who are changing the world, we have
the whole picture.
The whole picture. We have amazing people coming on this planet right now who are in that realm of they're going to raise us up above the chaos of when Jupiter, when Pluto is in Capricorn, he destroys all the operating systems that aren't working. That's the death. Then he transforms them. He always has given us the promise that he will transform us. So he transforms us by bringing this group of absolutely amazing young people that are on the planet right now, that are all going to be working towards building the new world starting this year. That's all the transition from the third dimension chaos into the new world structures. We have ages. We have ages of living on this planet. We're in the Iron Age right now. So the Iron Age is a time when we're in basics. We're not in the higher consciousness world. We're in a basic system. It's like boots on the ground, learn things the hard way. Well, if you study this whole process, we're getting ready to move into the Golden Age. And as we move in, and for years, people were thinking it was going to be somewhere around 2150 or somewhere in there. Well, now it's accelerated, and there's a lot of people who work with this because we can't quite time it. It's mathematically impossible to. This Golden Age is backing up to meet us. And there's even people who believe that between now, when we're finishing tearing down the third dimension structures that don't work anymore, that by 2044, when Pluto moves into Pisces, which is the God energy, we'll be in the Golden Age. Well, the last time we had a Golden Age on this planet, and please don't ask me the years because I can't remember right now, but when that happened, many, many thousands of years ago, we had a time of great affluence, a time of great knowledge, a time of great consciousness, no fighting, no arguing. We didn't have nation states. We didn't have politics in the last Iron Age, what they know about it. In the Golden Age, we're moving back into that Golden Age now, where we will, I see in the future, in the future charts, we're not going to have nation states anymore. And what's happening, they're all collapsing all over the earth right now. It's not just the United States. You go to Europe, you go to South America, all these nations are collapsing right now because they were working under a third dimension and did not get conscious enough yet to switch into a higher consciousness so that ego and greed did not have to be part of the picture. When we're in the golden age, there is no ego and there is no greed.
And dishonesty.
Which is brought on by ego and greed.
Yeah, just lack of integrity.
Well, okay, then I'm confused, Marilyn, because my understanding was we're going into the age of Aquarius. So how does that tie into the golden age, age of Aquarius? How does that all play together?
And that is the other thing that's just happened. We started in the 60s. If you remember, on Broadway, they brought out the This is the Age of Aquarius.
Yes, the famous show on Broadway, yeah.
Show. Mm-hmm. And so in the song, they talked about the Age of Aquarius. Mm-hmm. Well, here we go. Come back to science. In 1977, the scientists found what they thought to be another planet, and they called it Chiron.
Yes.
So Chiron showed up. All right. And all of a sudden the scientists were, we've got another planet. We've got another planet. Well, the astrologers jumped on it. It was like, that's the sign of the Age of Aquarius coming. And then, of course, in 77, the play came out. All of that was going on. And so, but this is long timelines that these happen in. So it wasn't one day that it was going to become the Age of Aquarius. Well, over those 50 years till the beginning of 2020 or those 35 years between when they found it, they disavowed it. They said, no, it's not. We're beginning to figure out the Kuiper Belt is more about asteroids and smaller planets that we can't call planets because scientifically they don't meet the line. They came back and said, well, we're going to take it. It's going to be an asteroid is what it's going to be. Well, that's fine, except the astrologers had already started writing the books about it. And they had already named it the planet that was going to be the thing that healed the wounds of past lives. It's karma coming up for renewal in a new age of Aquarius, because we are leaving behind. And I think when we had those two planets meet, when we had Jupiter and Saturn meet in December, that was the official end of the Age of Aquarius.
Oh, that was the end. So
it was not the Age of Aquarius, the Age of Pisces.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I was like, well, I'm really confused now. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
We officially in 2021 moved into the vibrational energy of Aquarius, which is an air sign. Technology is going to expand. We're going to have a lot of people now working in the higher consciousness. We went from being 2,000 years of Christ energy teaching us our own spiritual consciousness. Now we're learning community and global consciousness. And in those 2,000 years, the planet that's in charge now, where Pisces was Neptune, the planet in charge of this new age of 2,000 years is Uranus. And Uranus.
Well, Uranus controls Aquarius, right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, it doesn't ruler. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as we move into the new world of this air energy, very mental, very scientific, very technical. As we move into this age now, communities become more important, not the communities of the 40s and 50s and 60s, not the communal communities, but the community of local and the community of global are now having to learn how to live together.
As in humanity.
As in humanity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Because we can destroy ourselves now. And what that country does affects our country. And, for, the planets and, greenhouse gases and global warming and, pollution and 5G and what everyone's doing is affecting everybody else's lives. So now there's a real consciousness of our bigger community as a species.
Yes, there's a consciousness now that what we do, each person does matter.
Exactly.
We affect everybody. When we do something, we're putting that on everybody on the planet. Mm-hmm. And in that, we're learning now that we do matter what we do, that what we think and how we act. And in these cycles of these planets, we stay in our higher consciousness of what our chart tells us we should be doing to help the whole field of humanity. If we all were to own that for ourselves, become authentic, that you brought that word up again, integrity, being in our integrity of being authentic instead of pushing it off on someone else, then being congruent with it, always acting in that way of authenticity.
In addition to pushing it off, we can also choose to just numb it out, just not pay attention to it, right? Just distract ourselves with stupid stuff like our phones and social media and, you know, mindless TV programming, and just continue to be numb to it is another way of being irresponsible. It's like, by, you know, the saying, by not choosing or not acting, you're choosing. You know, it's not always the person who's taking the action and doing the obviously, damaging thing. Often it's the person who chooses to not act against it or taking action is a choice as well. And it's just as damaging.
Well, I actually talk to people about the fact that not acting is more dangerous because it can't be seen.
There you go.
The effects of what that did cannot be seen. It's a ripple effect.
And you'll never know.
And you'll never know how you could have been the one that changed a whole structure of how we do things.
I'm so glad you said that. I hear that all the time. People saying, well, it's just me, or even like something like recycling. Well, what good is it? But every single person, if every person said that, where would we be? And then the flip side, if every person said, well, if every other person, look at the power. I mean, look at ants, right? Like a little ant community, what they can build, one tiny little ant, but together as a power, as a community, look at what they can produce, right? So everyone has to own that.
We do. And that coming into that consciousness is what the Age of Aquarius is reminding us of that.
Awesome.
It's telling us, you know, look,
you matter. You matter.
You matter. The more you do to bring your chart to fruition in its highest energies, the quicker our planet is going to move into the age, that golden age.
I love it.
We're going to be in a place where I remind people now, because I am a bit of an activist, and I remind people now, because I'm old enough. I mean, I was back there in the when we were fighting racism, and in the 60s, and I was such an advocate during that time, and here we are again in this realm where we have got to own our advocacies. What is it that we came to help change? And in changing it, we can hasten going into that time where we are in the golden age. And here's the thing. I tell people now when they go, well, I can't do anything. I'm just one person. And I say to them, you know what? I said, do you understand now that on this planet, there is enough resources for every man, woman, and child to have food every day, to have water every day, to have knowledge every day, to live as productive people who nurture the planet instead of killing it. All of those things are coming now out, that if we stopped the world today and everybody moved into their own self-care and responsibility in a way, in 24 hours, everyone would have everything they need. We have that much resource on our planet. And we already have it here. We've set up a third dimension hierarchy that does not share that. And so now we're coming into this new age of Aquarius, where in the golden age, where we are going to be sharing this now. We've got enough people that say, I've got to go out in the world and I've got to leave an energy of working together. Nobody has to lose. Nobody has to lose. And when we do that, when we get that realization, and it's already here. I mean, oh my gosh, I talk to people all over the world now, and the things that people are doing are incredible. And they are developing, and all we hear is the bad stuff about every country's politics.
Well, it's a completely controlled narrative, right down to the whole vaccine issue, and what the truth is. The truth is just not what we're hearing.
No, it isn't. Well, we're hearing a truth. It's not the truth of where we're going. And in that going into this world now, once we start acknowledging these groups that are forming, these people that have come out, and I mean, my gosh, how many times can you get on YouTube and find a little 11-year-old kid standing in front of a big corporation telling them, you've got to redirect yourself. 10 years old, they're standing up now and saying things. We have people all over the world that are bringing groups together so we can live in a realm where we are respectful of other people, and where we don't, and I mean respectful in a way that it has to be a cross-shared thing. It has to be both sides doing that.
And respectful of the earth and the planet from where we live, and people getting back to resourcing themselves to commune with nature, even down to planting a little garden in their yard, to realize the dependence that we have on big technology to supply clean water, access to food. I mean, look at everyone buying all the toilet paper out when COVID hit, and what was it, 2020, right? I mean, just people feeling like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to survive. Like, we can't live in the wilderness. How would I even build shelter if something happened? We lose electricity, and I couldn't even make my own food. Where do I find clean water? So there, there's a front and a back to everything. And with all the evil that's going on with this controlled narrative and, delusion of truth and really what's factual science, as opposed to what people have now realized is what's important to me. The flip side is they woke up a little bit. It increased the consciousness of the planet as to, wait a minute, I'm like so removed from where I came, the stars, the earth, the moon, the planet, and I couldn't even sustain myself because I'm so advanced that I'm removed, and I've lost touch of what's really important to me. Being with people I love, values, hugging people, talking to strangers. I mean, wearing masks and not seeing people's facial expressions and the nonverbal body language. I mean, all these things have made us, at least some of us, consider like, wow, we have to re-examine our priorities and put our feet where our priorities are. Live according to what we say we value.
And what without, I don't want to fearmonger, but without us really committing ourselves to saving our planet, it's kind of scary to think of what could happen with that.
Of course.
And so this is now a time of, we don't have that choice. We do it, or we're going to have some pretty rough years. And astrologically, that shows. And then you go back in history and you can see where, when they made that choice not to grow, not to come into the next time of consciousness, how that took out countries, it took out time.
Yep, took out civilizations. That's fascinating. So tell us, Marilyn, how this stuff is not part of our school system. This is not part of our normal education. How would you recommend for people to educate ourselves on this? I mean, I want to ask you, my next question, just so you realize, is going to be, how do we find a good astrologer to help us? Obviously you do it, and you're going to tell us all how to contact you. But other than hiring an astrologer to read your chart and help you, how would we educate ourselves? Are there any resources, websites, books, or just information you'd like to help people know to learn about this?
And the gift of this time is that we do have connection to the internet.
Yes.
So all the information in the world is there.
Even though it's all censored. But
No, and there's truth in what you say, in that sometimes things that are written about what I do get censored. But
Yeah, mine too.
yes, exactly. And so here we are. But you can most definitely do something to kind of teach yourself a little bit of the terminology of what astrology means. Uh, there is uh, uh, there is a wonderful book called Astrology for Yourself, and
Okay.
it's a workbook. And the Astrology for Yourself workbook is Dimitri George is one of the authors of that. She's one of the authors.
Okay.
And so it's a workbook where you get a copy of your chart, and you can start on page 8 and start filling out your chart information. And then it's well written in English. It's not
Yay.
a lot of technology that astrology has. So it's where you
Not a lot of physics.
a lot of physics.
Yeah.
It just tells you how the planets, because the chart itself is a planetary system, our planets and the aspects of our planets. It's our zodiac sign, and it's our houses. So that's the top 3 things that are represented in the chart. It's your personal placement of your planets. Your chart is individual. No one else can have your chart. Actually, for the next 26,000 years, no one else can have your chart. So every chart I read is different, and so is different by where the planets sit, and that sets up the cycles of your life. Then we have the signs, which give us our characters and our characteristics, who we are, who we exhibit ourselves on the planet. And then the rising sign is the one that tells us how we want people to see us. But then we have the houses, which are the stages we play on. So the stages are the first house through the 12th house represent different compartments of our life. So from the first 3 houses are about our personal being. The second 3 houses are about our relationships with people that are intimate in our life. The next 3 in the circle are about our relationship in our neighborhood. And then the last 3 of the circle are our relationship globally to the collective. So as we study where the planets sit in the houses and how that causes us to react as planets transit by our natal chart every day, and then from there we can say, well, we know that Pluto, or that Saturn and Jupiter are the timing planets. Saturn is the timing planet of relationships in our life. He does a 29-year cycle. And in that 29-year cycle, we do 4 squares. And every time we do a square every 7 years, we have to stop and say, am I on my path? Am I doing things well? We have a Saturn square, and it says, I'm going to stop, think about who I'm with, what I'm doing at work, what my family is about, what my home is about, what my religious self is about, or my spiritual self is about. And we're going to stop and pause, because a quarter of the chart is where we hit what's called a square, and we have to change directions. So it's a 90-degree angle when we square. And that 90-degree angle teaches us we've got to grow up. So Saturn is our maturation planet. Every 7 years, he looks at our life. Well, if you go through your lifetime, if you've lived long enough, and you go through your lifetime, you can go back and look at your chart and see what was going on when you were 7 to 8, 14 to 15, 21 to 22, 28 to 30, and on out. Every 7.5 years, we make choices of, I want to grow up, I want to mature, or I don't. And the lesson of that comes from the relationships, because Saturn is a relationship planet. If we don't change when we need to, it means a lesson is coming. If we decide to sit still and not do something, not act, the universe is going to send us a lesson about that. and that's the Saturn. And then at the fourth one, we do what Saturn, which is called our Saturn return.
Saturn return.
And that's 28 to 30 years. And then we do another Saturn return when we're 58 to 60. And those three sections of our life are the different areas that we live in. When we're 1 to 28, we are still under the auspices of our family. When we move into 30 to when we come to 30 to 60 years or 58 years old, that's when we're out working. We're having babies, we're working, we're leaving our mark on the planet. When we hit our 60 Saturn return at the end of 60 years old, we move into the last third of our life, and that's where we leave our legacy. So we have these sections of our life that we work. If you know when the sections are coming by doing an astrology chart for yourself and know where you are in that, then you know how to act when it happens to you. That is when divorce happens.
And it helps you understand what's happening to you.
Right. It helps you understand that. We divorce, we marry, we have babies, we move, we go back to school, we find out our parents are smart. We find out that our boss wants to hold us where we are, but we got to move on. All of those things happen in a Saturn return at 28 to 30. At 58 to 60, we want to know what am I going to do now to leave my legacy? I'm about finished working. I'm about to move into what I love with my heart to do. And then it becomes not a job, but it becomes an avocation of passion.
Passion.
And we leave our passion those last 30 years of our life. And so in that realm, these planets, as they move around the chart, one of the interesting things I did, because I love to follow trends in astrology, was when 9/11 happened. About the third year after it, the C-SPAN ran the program that they would do where they read everybody's name that died.
Oh yeah.
On the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
I sat there like the third year and I thought, who were these people? So I got a pencil out and I started writing down, because on that year, and I haven't ever seen them do it again, they read their birthdays. They gave their name and their birthday. So that in that group, the massive number of those 3,500 plus people were in their Saturn return of 28 to 30 years or 58 to 60 years, or they were in their Uranus opposition of 40 to 42.
Wow.
They came with a mission.
Wow.
To do that.
Holy.
Because when you think of it, there were 50,000 people a day in each one of those buildings. And I always thought, why? Not a morose thing. I always thought, why did more people not die?
Mm-hmm.
Because 50,000 people in a building, two buildings, 100,000 people together on a block in New York every day.
Mm-hmm.
Why did that few of people die?
Yeah.
And then you started hearing the stories. Well, I was going in my car, I got a flat tire, or my wife got sick and I stayed home. I mean, you started hearing all the stories. Well, it's because it was a statement that was going to make a statement to change the world. It didn't have to be to take out 100,000 people. It didn't have to be that.
Of that magnitude.
So those people, their soul contract was to come and do that work. And so it's when you start seeing how this works in the math of it and in the time of it. And I was sitting at work in Atlanta when it happened. And I looked at this. I immediately had my computer with me and I immediately looked up the chart of why it happened. If you go to that chart, it was a It was an event that had an epic change on energy to it. It was going to shift the consciousness of the planet, and it did.
Wow.
So this is where you look at your chart and see where you shift the consciousness of your life, where you shift things because of the timing of planets moving. Then you begin to understand how to expect certain things during your life, to say, well, when that comes, I've got to be ready to not be afraid to make the move. I've got to be ready to do what I need to do in my higher strength. Yes, I may have to get divorced. I may have to, have a baby. I may have to do those things, but also in it, I am prepared to be, not to have to be surprised, but prepared to know that I can do it. I can let go of things that I need to let go of. We in the Western world also hold on to things a lot longer than we should. And that can cause us some grief. So here we are now in this time where time is radically changing into the new technologies, the new world of being conscious in Aquarius rather than unconscious in the prayer room. Now, those 2,000 years were needed. We had to learn that we did have a connection greater than ourselves. That's when those 2,000 years were exploring the planet, getting us out onto the whole planet, getting us into our spiritual knowing that it doesn't end with us. We are part of a greater thing, to be able to get to now where we can help that greater thing be absolutely powerful, absolutely earth saving and soul saving. So astrology is this energy, this time undulation, wave undulation that happens all the time in cycles that are known in astrology. And we're learning more and more about astrology every day because of the astronomy. The astronomers are have the capacity of technology now to go look out into other universes. And so we know what that means. So here we are now. We're in that period where we could flourish. It's our choice. It's our choice.
Fantastic. Well, I just love how, my show is really about trying to help people really understand themselves better and understand this life that we're all, journeying upon. And this is so spot on to assist in that, because what I've learned about astrology is, and everything we've just talked about, is it's really about helping us understand the bigger picture that we're part of. And even to take heart that you're not just a small, insignificant little fleck of flea on, the bigger body of the world. You're part of it. You're in it. You contribute to it. You're affecting it. You matter. And to give us the reminder that we're just part of this bigger system, and to hopefully be curious to explore, to learn what that system is, where we truly came from, so we can make sense of it all, and make the most of it all. Because the only way to real self-fulfillment is to feel like you are living your purpose, whether that be an amazing mom or a good, bed maker or a good cook. It doesn't matter. It's just to know in your heart that you are on your purpose for this planet that feeds your soul. That's the peace that surpasses all understanding, to quote the Bible. That's what we're all looking for, that peace in our heart. And I think astrology and the knowledge of really understanding can help us get there. That's the way I look at it.
It has been an amazing thing to be a part of, process to be a part of in my life, because it came to me so late in my life. And at that same time, I had to be that expansion in myself, and to meet the people that I have met on their journey over all of these years. unbelievable how people want to be their heart. They want.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you know who you are, you know how to recognize it when it shows up.
And true to your heart, true to yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you notice, if you know where your heart is in your life, in your chart, then you can know when something taps on the window. Hello.
Yeah.
You can go, oh my gosh, here it is.
Mm-hmm. Little heads up.
An event that I can step into now and change my whole life.
I love it. Marilyn, this has been just phenomenally amazing. Is there anything else that before we wrap up that you at this time really want our viewers and just reminding everyone, check it out on YouTube if you want at Fit Amy TV. You can watch the whole show there, or obviously everywhere you can find podcasts, Awakening Aphrodite. But is there anything else you'd want our viewers or listeners to know before we wrap up that you think is important?
Thank you. I think for me in this work now, because it is such an awakening time, and working in that realm, for me it is put on your Wonder Woman suit and get the courage to find out who you are. Be you. And in that will fix 95% of what's not working well. And if we do that, and yes, I know, and have
I'm like, woohoo!
So if we do that, then things are going to be good. They're going to be all right. And we really need to know that the power is within us. So I tell people, reach for that inward power, because that's what's coming out now that is going to really bring us into the ascension world and into the daily, world of being cared for in our own life. So just have the courage to do it.
I love it. Great advice. Marilyn, thank you so much. Can you please tell people how they can find you and tell us about your book as well?
Yes. Actually, when I came back from the near-death experience, the first year I was here, I wrote a book, and it was called the IMark Code. And I took that book, which was really my growth into what I was going to be teaching. And I have, in my readings that I do, I have one of the readings that is called the IMark reading. And that IMark Code, it's the psychology of astrology. And what that reading does is tells you how you literally think and operate and where your blocks are. It's not a circular reading. It's based on the degrees of your planets. So it tells you how you think, how you process information, where you might get stuck. So that's a reading that's come out of that book that is so important for people now. A lot of people are coming back to that and remembering what that was. I also have a deck of cards called The Journey to Clarity. And that deck of cards, along with a friend of mine who did helped with a lot of the illustrating and things for me and the writing of it, we created this deck of cards back in 2010, 11, in that area, when the world was getting ready to shift. The Mayan calendar was getting ready to come to an end. People couldn't get clarity. So we did a deck of cards that you pull certain cards according to archetypes, and it helps you find your center, is what it does. And then you can go, oh, okay, I'm on the right road, or no, maybe not. So those are the two things that I have given out to the world. Mm-hmm. But then my work now is more of this finding your chart and then finding where you move into that work of the future, move into the Age of Aquarius. So I have a website. It's called astrologermd.com. And so astrologermd.com, that is, it gives you some information about how to reach me and how to basics of what I do.
And people can hire you for personal readings through that website. Okay.
Exactly. Through that website, you can send me an email. I'll connect with you. And then you can kind of look at the work that I'm doing in there. And then we can also talk about what you might do. But also, and then as always, my email address, it's 3 words, SEE, feel, FEEL, live, LIVE, see, feel, live, one word, at gmail.com. And then I will reach out to you from there. Now, I have to have a caveat here. I live in the middle of nowhere. I tell people I live at the end of the world. I live in the western mountains of North Carolina, where there is very poor reception at times, mostly with my phone. So if I don't call you back in a day or two, please get back with me. I might not have ever gotten your request.
Or the internet or an email. Okay. Good to know. Yep.
So just, don't, if you haven't heard back from me in 2 days, push that button again because, or call me again, because sometimes the calls never get through to me.
And all of those will be on the show notes, everyone. So if you're driving or running and working out or whatever, busy in your house while you're listening to the show or watching the show, check out the show notes. They'll all be in there, written down for you, ready for you to access when you're available. Marilyn DuMont, thank you so very much for being on Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier.
This is a blessing. I so appreciate this.
I do too, my friend. This has been tremendous. I hope we've really opened up a lot of people's eyes to be curious and explore this whole new vast universe that we're all a part of. Thank you so much. Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.